I'm about to show you the exact operating system that every successful B2B service business runs. Now, you may be thinking, every successful B2B system? Yes, because these patterns are ubiquitous across 100K businesses, 1 mil, 10 mil, and even 100 mil businesses. So for those that don't know, I'm Sheni. I make businesses run a little bit better every single day by mapping processes, building workflows based on the bottlenecks that I find, and handing them over with amazing documentation. And one of two things happen. Either they drastically increase their headcount or they drastically increase their revenue. But either way, they get out of fulfillment. So by the end of this video, you're going to have a 3-step blueprint. And this blueprint is going to enable you at whatever size you're at to build out all of the infrastructure that's required in order to make your systems absolutely shine. So let's get into it. Now, every successful business, every business, in fact, is built on departments. Those departments include things like marketing, sales, fulfillment, IT, HR, compliance, legal, etc. For the most part, marketing, sales, and fulfillment are the most important ones, or at least the ones that, as an agency or a B2B service, you may be dealing with companies where you're dealing with one of those three. Now, every single one of these departments will have a number of different functions inside of them. So for example, operations will have onboarding, research, planning, launch, reporting, auditing, and a number of other things as well. Marketing will have different steps insofar as, let's say, for example, marketing was cold email. If marketing was cold email or cold outreach, there'll be some element of lead generation, lead enrichment, getting the databases ready, getting the data ready, cleaning it, pruning it, doing what you need to do there. The initial outreach, the follow-up cadences and nurture processes and lead magnets that people get sent to, and then the acquisition, the acquisition of a MQL or SQL or whatever you want to call a lead or call in and of itself. So you have an understanding of what the departments and functions are. For every single one of your departments inside of your business, you can split them into these constituent parts. Why am I talking about this right now? Well, because once you understand how these processes work, you're going to find that every single one of these things that you have inside of your business can be trapped and calculated and tracked in different ways. And that leads us to what the very first pillar is, which is data. Data can be explained as the objects in your business, the characteristics of said objects, and then how those characteristics interact with other objects. Now that's very, very loose, and it sounds kind of wild when I say that. You don't have any bearings in order to put that on, but I'm going to explain it in a way that is very, very clear, because basically every single B2B service based business is going to have at least one of the three that I'm going to show you right now. So let's start off here. Client. What I'm going to do is I'm going to explain the object and then talk about the characteristics. So a client is an object in this way, shape, and term. The characteristics of a client are all of the things that can make up a client. So for example, the name of the client, the client's email, the company website, the company LinkedIn, the contract link that was last signed, the Slack channel ID, the Slack user ID, the LTV that client has currently provided the business. These are all data points that can be captured. And this is an example of an object and its characteristics. Another example, team. You're going to have team members. They're going to have names. Those team members are also going to have emails, birthdays, Slack user IDs, phone numbers, and also working hours if they are people who work either 9 to 5 or they are the founders and they just work Monday to Sunday like all founders do. And then you have another one, which would be something like Zoom recordings. You may not actually be capturing this inside of any system that you may already have right now, but this is an example of an object. And this object, Zoom recordings, has the following characteristics: date, time, whether it would be start time or end time or both, length of call, summary, client invitees, transcripts, linked clients. And this is where things can sort of like go, where we're talking about the objects, the characteristics, and the links between those objects. A Zoom call may be had with a client. So there would be a characteristic on Zoom recordings, which is called linked client. Same way, this client is going to have a number of Zoom recordings. This would therefore mean that the characteristic of a client would also be linked Zoom recordings. Team, there will be assigned team members to specific clients. For example, operations managers, account managers, copywriters, or whoever it is that may be working with the said person. So the team member is going to have associated clients, and the client is going to have linked team member, whether it be an operations manager or whoever the person is. So what you want to do, and the reason why this is the first layer and there isn't really much of a gain when we're talking about this, is because you need to collect this information in databases so the agents and automations can talk to them. This is always the foundation. Every single person without fail that I've worked with who did not have this in place was the reason why they came to me in the first place, because they needed something put in place in order to solve the problems that they had. So all of the problems that were spoken of when it came to understanding what happens across each function of each department. Let's say there is an issue with launch. It takes forever for us to get the ads out. We don't know why there are so many buttons that need to be clicked, blah, 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 blah. When you walk through the specific processes, you get an understanding of what's actually happening there. Now, in order for you to be able to do anything with what's happening, the first thing is to understand what's going on. And then once you've understood what's going on, the step to building out a solution, which is what we're going to get into, which is the next layer, that's where everything else comes into play. This is where, but you can't actually do step 2 until step 1 has been accomplished. So you may be thinking, what is the second layer then? So what actually goes into place here? That's where code comes into play. So, and you've already seen what that is, but we'll just ignore that for now. So code takes the things and your processes and then shaves off manual activity. Those 4 things are all, so these are all basically ways that objects need to be managed. And what this means is that there are certain elements and certain activities that happen inside of your business that code backed by data can fix for you. So going back to the operations and onboarding sector, so operations being the department and onboarding being the function, these are the general steps of onboarding for most businesses that are B2B services. Number 1, collect payment. Number 2, set up the tools or the infrastructure or whatever it may be. Number 3, schedule an intro call or an onboarding call or whatever you call it, kickoff call, blah, blah, blah. Number 4, create a client roadmap prior to said call in order to make sure that the client that's going through this process actually has the requisite information so that things are being done as accordingly. All of the information that comes into place here directly influences all of the stuff that can happen over here. So this is the reason why we have the first step, which is the collection of data in databases. Now I'm going to explain what that looks like and show you some examples in a second, but this is exactly how things go. Now, the things that you can do with code are, for the most part, automations, MCPs, and agent skills. Right now, I call agent skills anything that involves AI, where the skill is just the standard operating procedure version of some sort of AI workflow that has been created. Now, when it comes to automations, people know what an automation is. It's just using a robot to move one thing over here. And there are 4 things you can do. You can either grab new stuff, which is called get. You can create stuff, which is called post. You can patch or put stuff, which is called update, or you can delete stuff. Those are the 4 things that any and every automation can do. Then you have the agent skills. Now, agent skills are, and the best way to explain this is you have a list of things that you know how to do inside of your business. You have then communicated that operating procedure to AI in some way, shape or form. And in doing so, what you've done is you've created a list of activities that an AI with a number of different scripts and automations that it can call upon on the back end can do in order to do certain things for you automatically. So what does that end up actually looking like in this situation? Well, when we're talking about this 4-step process, collecting payment can be done by automations. 100%. Automations, in fact, can do the payments, it can set up the tools, and it can help schedule the introductory call. MCPs. Now, MCPs are interchangeable with automations and agent skills for the sake of this conversation, but it's just a way for the agent, i.e. the AI, to have access to directly to specific tools that you've given it access to do specific actions. So this and this we can treat basically as the same for now. It's not exactly the same, but we're treating it as the same for the purposes of this conversation. MCPs can set up tools. And it often does, especially when it has the right level of permissions and can do certain things inside of different situations, different places. And then the agent skills themselves can create the client roadmaps and can set up the tools. So for example, if one of the things that you know needs to be done is the creation of a PowerPoint presentation, what you can do with AI now, which is where these skills come into play, and this is an example of a skill, is you can create a templated Google Drive item, which could be a slideshow with 8 or 9 pages. Those pages will have their own specific merge tags in them or merge fields in them. And then what you can do is you can have an input, whether it be a train of thought that you've spoken through or typed through into an AI, or some form of thing that you have grabbed from the internet and fed into something like Claude or whatever it may be. And you could say, hey, I need you to create this roadmap document and have this be sent directly to the client because they have now booked their kickoff call. That will then tell the AI, all right, this is what page 1 needs to look like, page 2, page 3, page 5, page 6, 7, 8, 9, etc. This is what they look like. This is what's meant to go in them. From the information that you have, fill this in. If you don't have the information, put either a blank there or raise this as a question to ask the user before we actually go ahead and make this. This is what skill is. This is how it's all meant to work. Now, this entire subsection of things that can be done by quote unquote robots is what I call code. Every single element of what goes into a system that actually works, where people are able to carry dozens and dozens of clients worth of workload, has been done because someone has systematically chopped away at the workflows that people are doing to a point where everything that exists is only the pure efforts of the person that is actually meant to be doing the thing in the first place. So now you have agent skills and you have MCPs and you have automations which are doing and operating and automating 80% of a system that used to be super clunky and take a ton of time. This is the second layer. Now, when it comes to understanding the third layer, a lot of people get the fact that a lot of people think that they're done at this point, because a lot of people right now are actively spending a lot of time inside of the terminal now. So they'll open up Claude or Claude Cowork, and they'll type away at the stuff that they've built, and then they'll make things work, and then they'll build things left and right and make sure that things are doing what they need to do in order to successfully achieve a specific output. So for example, if you were someone who was building funnels, the very first step may be planning the funnel. The second step may be scripting out each of the pages or doing the copywriting. Number 3 may be the design. Number 4 may be putting together the pages. Number 5 may be a quality checking gate. And then number 6 will end up being, when it gets handed over to the client. And then number 7 is launch. Well, steps number 1, 2, and 3 are all things that a skill can actually do. Now, if you still have to sit inside of this random terminal and bounce back and forth between this chat that you're having a conversation with that's saying, hey, I need you to create this person's work. I need you to create this person's work. I need you to create this person's work. I now need you to write the copy for this guy and this guy and this guy. I now need you to write the copy and the designs for these guys. If you're doing that all day, yes, things are working quicker, but it's missing a way to track things. It's missing a bird's eye view, and it's also missing certain elements of routine and structure and tracking that can then go back and forth between what's currently being done in the terminal / inside of Claude Code and Cowork and what can be done in front of your face live on an app. So the third layer is user interface. Now, in order to describe user interface, I'm actually going to pull up something that I created for myself. So this here is my content Kanban. So you're kind of going to see how the sausage was made here in a second. So I have a series of pipeline stages, and within these pipeline stages, certain things will occur. So I'll kind of walk you through how things move left and right, and then I'll show you where all of the stuff insofar as data is concerned and all the stuff within that insofar as code is concerned actually speaks with everything else. So I'm going to add an idea. This idea is going to be a new video idea. So I'm just going to create this as, so I've called this how to build a cold demo operating system from scratch using Google Sheets and Claude. Okay, so I have now successfully created that video. So where did it go? It's now popped up right here as an idea. Now, this is where a lot of the stuff that I've spoken about right now actually comes into fruition. So I have this idea, and there are actually other ways that ideas can enter this table. And what I can do is I can either accept or reject an idea. Now, if I reject this idea, the first thing that it's going to do is it's going to remove it from view. So I'm not going to do that. What I'm instead going to do is I'm just going to click priority build, and then I'm going to accept the idea. When I click accept the idea, here's what's going to happen. This is going to move from idea to package. And what it's also going to do is it's going to create a bunch of video titles that I can now use in order to understand that this is exactly something that I want. So give me 30 minutes and I'll make your code emails impossible to ignore. That's not really something that I want, but that's exactly what I'm looking for. How to actually automate cold emails with Google Sheets and Claude. Watch me build a cold email system that converts in 45 minutes. So these titles are actually kind of crap. So I'm going to redo them. So I'm going to click this button called redo titles. What that's going to do is it's going to refresh these, and it's going to refresh these based on any changes that I've made to this box here. That is now, okay, so I tried building a cold email OS in 2 hours, raw results, amazing. How to actually automate cold email, great. I'll just paste in the one that I had. Don't hire a VA, build this cold email system instead. How you automated 1,000+ cold emails with Google Sheets and Claude. Honestly, all 5 of those are good. I'm only going to pick 3 of those anyways, because that's what the A/B test on YouTube is going to give me anyways, but that's about it. So now that those have been good, I'm going to accept those titles. Now that I've accepted those titles, it's now moved to build thumbnails. I'm now going to create some thumbnail concepts. Now, normally I wouldn't necessarily need to do this because there's a different way of me doing thumbnails now. But the whole point of this is that I can use this to create my thumbnails in a tool which is called Thumio. I'm going to zoom in a tiny bit more just so that you can see everything here. So I'm now going to use this to create my thumbnails in Thumio. What this is going to do is it's going to generate, based on each of these 5 video titles, exactly what the thumbnails should be. And then once I create a thumbnail, so you can see here, these are all just prompts that I can then feed to Nano Banana, to Fowl.ai, or to Thumio, or to Pixels, whatever it may be that I'm using. Once I've created that thumbnail, I'm now going to have a hook / pieces of video content get created. So I'm just going to upload a random attachment, and then what that's going to do is it's going to change it over to script. And now that it's going to script, what's going to happen here is we're going to get a hook, and it's going to be time for us to start planning our video out. Now, that is in and of itself the exact process that I talk about when I say you need a user interface for the data and the code that is working on the back end. So let me show you what the data is and also show you what the code is. So you can see a pretty colorful database here. Now, when I said data, this is what I mean. You have an object. The object is the name of the table. You also have the characteristics. The characteristics are the columns of each table. And then each individual object you have that is of this name lands as their own sector of rows. So you can see here, the idea names are all here. You have the video IDs, you have hooks, you have, in this case for me, just the serious idea that's being used, the content bucket, the content status, the video titles, the thumbnail concepts, and the record IDs, and then a number of other fields that have been hidden from view, like the video content itself, the associated videos that come into the script, the video description, the pinned comments, and the file name of the actual video in and of itself. These are all of the objects, and this is the object, and these are all of the characteristics. When it comes to the code in play, this is basically coming from a bunch of automations that are happening on the back end, and you'll see that they all follow a specific structure. But the long and short of it is the following: when something happens, we get something else to happen as well. So what I would do in this case is I would have a button. That button would be called something, and then that would launch a script. So you can see here that a lot of these things are agents. I'm not opening up the entire script because I don't really want to give away, you know, the entirety of the HTTP request, which is basically just going to docs or open up this endpoint, and I can't be bothered to just change the endpoints. But basically, all we're doing is, if you remember what I said, we are doing a post. We are creating something. In this case, we are creating we're reprompting in order to create a bunch of, in fact, this actually is the wrong one. I'm going to show you this one, which is this one, the creating the titles. So when we create the titles, what we're doing is we're taking the record ID, i.e. the row for the YouTube video object, which has the characteristic of idea name. We're funneling that over to a webhook, which is basically hosted on my own Claude Code instance, which has a skill which creates video titles based on an SOP that one of my own clients actually gave me. So this is now creating ideas for me whenever I want it. And it's linked to the button that is called accept idea. I have another one for creating thumbnail concepts. So whenever the create thumbnail concepts button is clicked, we're running a separate script where we're sending all of the video titles and the idea names and a bunch of other things over. So you can see how this is working. Something occurs, we're then running a script, and this script is an automation which is triggering some sort of agent work on the back end. Then we have the thumbnails doing the same thing, triggering some agent stuff on the back end. And then the pinned comments and a number of other things, this is also triggering the exact same thing. So you can see how this is all starting to work together. Now, the UI in this case is built on Airtable. But what is a UI? A UI is a user interface. It equals the buttons, views, and clickable surfaces of your system. These can be custom coded front ends, these can be project management systems, these can be CRMs, but for the purpose, it's all the same. It's all exactly the same. The only thing that matters is that it holds information and you can automate with it. That's it. Now, the top tools for this are, and I would say pick one from every row. Do not pick multiple from the same row. Airtable / Notion. Reason being, the same way that the data side on Airtable is an object, which is the table name, and then characteristics, which are the columns. You can create Notion databases, which are the same thing. And the database could be the name of the object, and then the characteristics would be the columns of this Notion board. So that's exactly how that works. Then you have Supabase and Neon plus custom coded front ends. And this is actually an optional element. This kind of comes along with it. But what is this? What does this actually look like? What does this mean? So here's an example of what Neon actually looks like. So Neon is another version. Think of Neon as like a super powered version of Airtable. Neon and Supabase are the exact same thing. They are called Postgres, which is just a type of database. It's just a place to store data. That's it. And you'll find that there are a number of different things here, but the most important thing is that there's an actual object which has a name. In this case, it's a Loom transcript. And you can see that the columns, which are the characteristics, where Loom transcripts is the object, are shown as is. So you have the video IDs, you have the URLs of the videos, you have the IDs that come from Neon itself, you have the length of the transcript, if the transcript is pending, how many retries, when it was created, and then the transcripts and the titles, etc., etc., etc. So this is all information that's being held inside of this type of database. Now, the difference between what you would use Airtable and Notion for versus what you'd use Supabase and Neon for is if you're custom coding this interface, you're going to want to use something that looks a little bit like this, because running this off of Airtable is one, expensive, and two, isn't going to be as powerful as what you would get here. This is great when you need everything packaged in one. Same thing with Notion, because you have, a few dozen people who can all work within the same system. However, when you're building something completely to specification, you want something which is Postgres. So that's that. Now, the final one is closed CRMs, GHL, HubSpot, Attio. These are your CRMs. The reason why I've included CRMs in this list is because a CRM is another database in and of itself. All of the leads, all of the prospects, all of the potential clients that you have inside of your CRM is the main leads view. So if you go on HubSpot and you see leads, that is a table where the object is a lead. Whatever you decide to call a lead in your business. These could be for, you may be using this for sponsorship stuff. You may be using this for cold outreach on your end. You may be using this for ads and opt-ins for where your setters and closers are going to be managing the entire sales process. Whatever it may be, leads. That is the name of the object. The characteristic is every single field, including the name, the contact details, and every other custom field that you would make. That's what a CRM is built on. That's how a CRM is made. It follows the exact same principles and processes that we've spoken about up until now. So that kind of takes us to where we're at right now. And if we take a look at this video in and of itself, I'll give you the breakdown so that you can understand this for yourself. And then when it comes to actually building this for yourself, I have two options for you. So every business has departments and functions. When you break the departments down into their constituent functions and then you map out the processes that are involved inside of each of these functions, you'll find that there are a number of objects that exist within your business. Those objects will have specific characteristics. For example, the object, which is called client, will have a name, will have an email, will have a website, and will have a LinkedIn. The object, which is called a team member, will have a name, will have an email, a birthday, a phone number, specific working hours, and a number of other characteristics as well. Zoom recordings, emails, whatever it may be, they will have a date, they will have an ID, they will have invitees and emails associated with them as well. That is the object. Those are the characteristics. When you put everything together, you can find that a client will link to a Zoom recording and a client will also link to a team member, and you will get extra characteristics based on that. Those linkages are important to put together because that is how the code is going to speak to everything else. That is how you're going to take the processes that were outlined and then you're going to shave off all of the manual activity within those processes. For example, for an onboarding process, you'll collect payments, set up tools, schedule introductory calls, and create client roadmaps. All four of these things can be overtaken by automations and skills and agents and MCPs and insert code system, which exists wherever you would want it to exist. And the place that this all exists in a way where you can actually see how things are moving is a user interface. And the user interface equals the buttons, views, and the clickable surfaces of your system, from custom coded front ends to project management systems and CRMs. But for our purposes, they are all the same. So if you're looking, so I said I had two options. If you're looking for a way to build this out for yourself, click this video here. It's going to give you more information on how that actually looks. If you can't be bothered to do this yourself because you think this is a lot of work and you want to do this with an expert, click the link in the description, click the link in the first comment. That'll take you directly to a call with me where I can have a look at everything that's going on and then we can talk further about how things are going. But either way, it's been Sheni. Hope you've enjoyed this video. Make sure to click this video. There's more where this came from.